Join us today with our guests, baritone Sanford Sylvan and pianist David Breitman. Here's your host, Bill McGlaughlin.
Good morning, my friends. Welcome to St. Paul Sunday Morning. Here's a show we've been trying to put together for a few years. We finally got you in the studio. I'm looking at my friend Sanford Sylvan, a wonderful baritone, and his partner in crime from time to time, David Breitman, who's sitting over at the piano. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
A couple of times we've tried to schedule this. You are a very busy young man.
Yes.
And we were saying just before I went on the air, you're trying to actually do a little less now and find a more humane pace.
Which is nice. I mean, it's much healthier, I think, for the music in the end run, as well as ourselves.
You've been, I think, from the very start, a leader singer, art song singer. But I think for most of the folks listening today, I think most of you probably know Sanford Sylvan as an opera singer because you've gotten terrific recognition, say, for the roles that you did with Peter Sellers, the very brilliant and irascible director.
All those Mozart productions, and the John Adams operas too.
But it's to the art song which we're returning today.
Absolutely.
And the two of you have done quite a lot of work. In fact, we're going to start with music of Schubert. I believe you just recorded this. We're going to hear, I think, of all of them, of all the incredible Schubert songs, still probably my favorite cycle. It's the first one I knew as a child, the Die schöne Müllerin.
Right.
And we'll have just the first four songs, which actually make a nice little set by themselves. Will you tell our folks what we'll hear in these four songs?
We meet the young man, and we meet a very bright, young, naive, hopeful young gentleman making his way, his journey into the world. And so the first song is just a strophic song of, here I am and here I go. And then the second song is the beginning of the actual discovery. He hears a brook, and the relationship with the brook begins, the relationship that will become throughout the cycle the most important relationship, the brook in which he then throws himself at the end of the cycle. The third song, he hears the mill wheels. He comes crashing through the woods, kind of, as the piano's crashing, and then he hears the wheel and he sees the little lights of the house, finds work, and then the fourth song, he finds the girl, or he asks the brook, is this why you brought me here? And so we get every element, important element in the cycle, the young man, the brook, the mill, and the girl.
Hear from Sanford Sylvan, our baritone, and David Breitman at the piano. The first four songs of the wonderful cycle from Schubert, Die schöne Müllerin.
Das Wandern ist des Kühlers Lust, das Wandern. Das Wandern ist des Kühlers Lust, das Wandern. Das muss ein schlechter Müller sein, dem niemals fiel das Wandern ein. Das Wandern, das Wandern, das Wandern, das Wandern. Vom Wasser haben wir's gehört, vom Wasser. Vom Wasser haben wir's gehört, vom Wasser. Das hat nicht Rast bei Tag und Nacht, hier steht's auf Wanderschaft bedacht. Das Wasser, das Wasser, das Wasser, das Wasser. Das sehen wir auch den Römer, den Römer. Das sehen wir auch den Römer, den Römer. Die gar nicht gerne stille stehen, die sich ein Tag nicht müde drehen. Die Römer, die Römer, die Römer, die Römer. Die Steine, selbst so schwer sie sind, die Steine. Die Steine, selbst so schwer sie sind, die Steine. Sie tanzen mit dem Mond rein und wollen gar nicht schneller sein. Die Steine, die Steine, die Steine.
lovely. These were the first 4 songs, of course, of Du schöne Müller and the lovely young maid of the mill. Probably the most famous of all of Schubert's cycles. If it's not, it might be a Winterreise, which is also by the same poet, isn't it? Wilhelm Müller. He was a poet just 2.5 years older than Schubert, born 1794, and died just a year before them. They both lived tragically short lives. We were spending this morning with Sanford Sylvan, who just sang those first 4 songs so beautifully with us, and David Breitman at the piano. And these gentlemen have recorded it, this entire cycle. If you'd like to have a chance, you can hear that. But we're going to move ahead now because you've made us a wonderful full program with more German music, some French, some American music, and we want to get to some of the rest of it. But that recording is out. Tell me the label, I can remember. Is it None Such?
None Such, yeah.
None Such recording of the entire Maid of the Mill with David playing on the forte piano, which I think must be very interesting to hear. I'll have to go down. After we're done here, I'll go downstairs and check it out of the library and listen to it myself. Sure. You're going to sing us some music of Brahms. We're going to have Brahms now, a little more Brahms in a moment, and then Brahms at the very end of the show. Obviously, a composer for whom you must feel a great deal of affection.
Well, yes, we haven't performed a lot of Brahms. Basically, we're bringing you new music for us.
You're going to give us a couple of folks.
Right. Feinsliebchen, Du sollst nicht barfuss gehn, which is a wonderful courting song. And often in the courting songs, in the ballad tradition, especially even in English, often there's a man on a horse and a serving girl, and he usually, through his wiles, takes advantage of the young woman. But here we have a young woman who is as smart as he is, and she lays everything out on the line, and he says, I'd like to marry you, and she says, well, he says, you shouldn't go around barefoot. She says, well, but I don't have any shoes. He says, I'll buy you some shoes. She says, well, you can't, and because I just, he says, I want to marry you, and I'll buy you shoes. And she says, you can't marry me, I'm just a serving girl. And he says, yes, but you have your
honor.
Honor, thank you. She says, yes, I do have my honor. And he says, well, good, that's fine. I want to marry who I like. And she says, great. And he pulls a little ring out of the bag. So in this, we have a happy ending. And then in Stille Nacht, the second one, which is just a very kind of echt German night alone, the sounds of the forest and the sounds of the wood and one's yearning soul and all those kind of different sounds.
Okay. Sanford Sylvan with David Breitman to sing for us 2 of Brahms' folk song settings.
Feinsliebchen, du sollst mir nicht barfuß gehen, du zertrittst dir die zarten Füßlein schön. La 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 la, la 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 la, du zertrittst dir die zarten Füßlein schön. Wie sollte ich denn nicht barfuß gehen, hab keine Schuhe ja anzuziehen. La 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 la, la 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 la, hab keine Schuhe ja anzuziehen. Feinsliebchen, willst du mein eigen sein, so kaufe ich dir ein paar Schülein fein. La 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 la, la 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 la, so kaufe ich dir ein paar Schülein fein. Wie könnte ich euer eigen sein? Ich bin mein Abenddienstmägdelein. La 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 la, la 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 la, ich bin mein Abenddienstmägdelein. Und bist du arm, so nehm ich dich doch, du hast ja Ehr und Treue noch. La 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 la, la 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 la, du hast ja Ehr und Treue noch. Die Ehr und Treu mir keiner nahm, ich bin, wie ich von der Mutter kam. La 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 la, la 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 la, ich bin, wie ich von der Mutter kam. Und Ehr und Treu ist besser wie Geld, ich nehm mir ein Weib, das mir gefällt. La 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 la, la 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 la, ich nehm mir ein Weib, das mir gefällt. Fast zog aus seiner Tasche fein
Thanks. Those are absolutely beautiful. It's striking, isn't it, how reverently Brahms treats these simple tunes, and also the way he manages to make a kind of counterpoint by finding wonderful bass lines against which these simple tunes can unfold. Yeah. Really striking. This was Sanford Sylvan, our baritone David Breitman, the piano, two of Brahms' folk song settings. We're going to save two more of those for the very end of the program, if you can stay tuned all the way to then. But in the meantime, we're going to have, as Sanford just called it, some of the serious Brahms here, or some of the bigger, these are pieces, more art song sort of Brahms, original tunes. What is there to look forward in these? First of all, let's see how many of them are there. Looks like six.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Basically, love, love, always love. Mm-hmm. But the middle section forms a group about couples and woods, nature. You know, people lived so in touch. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but they really did live in touch with nature. Trees, forest, everything spoke to them. And throughout this cycle, the first song, throughout this group of songs, people are responding to the night, the wind, the trees. And then we have lots and lots of couples. The first song is a couple to be, perhaps, a bunch of students and a young woman asleep in her bedroom. And then the second couple is a young man alone, with the stillness and the sounds of the night. And then we really get into the couples, wir wandelten, questioning with one's partner, what's going on. And then the fourth song is one of the greatest songs he wrote, von ewiger Liebe. And I think the thing about this song that always astonishes me is that within this poetry and this music, one person says to another person about the most frightening thing one can say intimately to one's partner, which is, are you ashamed of me in front of other people? Which is an amazing, amazing thing that a young man says to the girl. And it's great, again, a wonderful thing, it's the woman in the von ewiger Liebe, the woman who is the strength and the wisdom, and she calms him down, and she says, no, don't worry.
This is the one that's the earliest. This was 1864, when Brahms was just 31, and he was going through a love affair which wasn't turning out very well.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Interesting. And the woman always for Brahms is this eternal kind of figure of strength. And then another, Back to the Forest again. And then the last song is a couple, again, another young woman who's smart, and a young man wants to get her, and he tries everything. He tries seduction, he tries almost, force with his being, and she says, no, go home, go to bed, I'm done with you now.
Once again, here's Sanford Sylvan, and this may be serious Brahms, but not all of it's so serious, as you can see. 6 wonderful songs of Brahms, Sanford Sylvan and David Breitman.
Schatz, guten Abend, mein Kind. Guten Abend, mein Kind. Ich komm aus Lieb zu dir. Ach, mach mir auf die Tür, mach mir auf die Tür. Mach mir auf, mach mir auf, mach mir auf die Tür. Mein Tür ist verschlossen, ich lass dich nicht ein. Ich lass dich nicht ein. Mutter, die rett mir klug, wärst du heran mit Fug, wärst mit mir vorbei, wärst mit mir, wärst mit mir, wärst mit mir vorbei. So kalt ist die Nacht, so eisig der Wind, so eisig der Wind, dass mir das Herz erfriert, mein Liebe löschen wird. Öffne mir, mein Kind, öffne mir, öffne mir, mein Kind. Lösche dein Lieb, lass sie löschen, lass sie löschen. Lösche sie immer zu, geh heim zu Bett zu. Gute Nacht, mein Knabe, gute Nacht, gute Nacht, mein Knabe.
We have now music of Ravel and Fauré, and I suppose there's a reason you put them together. Ravel was a pupil of Fauré, wasn't he, at the conservatory?
Yes, I believe so.
And it was at a time when Ravel wasn't doing very well from the academic standpoint. He never won any prizes, never got, I don't know whether he practiced or did his assignments on time for that matter, but it was Fauré who encouraged him more than any of the other professors, which I think were very stiff and sort of academic at the Conservatoire in Paris. I don't know these works of Ravel that you're about to give us. They're very early, 1896, so he would have been just about 19 or so when he wrote them.
Yeah.
And tell us a little about them.
These songs are two beautiful love songs of a woman named Anne. We affectionately refer to them as the Anne songs. And I have always had a fantasy of opening a program. There's something about this that is not only the purest of music, but it's kind of the purest of Ravel. You know, it has just that absolute clarity and light and beauty. And so this year, finally, we decided to open our recital programs with these two songs. And then on the programs themselves, we link them to another group of Fauré, Opus 85. But today we'll be doing the L'Horizon Chimérique, which we'll get to at some point.
Yeah, what's wonderful, the little bit I've heard of this, is that Ravel at a certain point in his youth made an attempt to write in a very old style. People who play the piano will remember the Pavane for the Princes, for example. That's in an almost archaic style. It's an old form.
Yeah.
The music moves rather slowly. They're extended chords. The chords are rich. They're ninth chords, but the feeling is somehow of antiquity as well. So
and this certainly plays into that.
let's get to them. These are two epigrams of the poet and evangelist Clément Marot. His date's 1495 to 1544. This is music made in 1896 and 1899. Sanford Sylvan and David Breitman.
saints en leur gloire immortelle. Et autant que je deviens glorieux dès que je passe un drapeau évident.
When I see the brunette maiden so well-fashioned, young of figure, shaped like the gods. These are love poems, aren't they?
Absolutely. Well, the image of the snow hitting him and melting.
Yeah.
It's kind of cinematic slow motion, the first song, you know.
That's right.
She throws the snow and it's just, the song is in slow motion and the snowball kind of melts.
Yeah, and he says, then I found it was fire.
Right.
These are quite beautiful songs of Maurice Ravel. Is two epigrams of Clément Marot. Was a name I've just recently learned to say, more or less. Early 16th century French poet. We've just had music of Maurice Ravel. We're going to hear now a little of a man to whom Ravel looked for guidance and inspiration, and I think more than anything else, understanding, because he was. Yeah. This is music composed very shortly after the war. In fact, a series of very great living French composers at the time, who included Saint-Saëns and Widor and a couple of others, and Fauré. It's astonishing to think of them composing after the First World War, but they all lived long lives, and they were making pieces about the war and about these voyages. It's actually some of how this piece came about. It's composed in 1921. This is music of Gabriel Fauré, L'Horizon Chimérique, Opus 118. Sanford Sylvan is our baritone, and David Breitman, our pianist. You're right, spectacular songs. This was music of Gabriel Fauré, a cycle of 4 songs, L'Horizon Chimérique. Does that mean something as simple as the chimerical horizon, something like that?
Yes, he's looking out there all the time, doesn't know what to do.
Our baritone just then, Sanford Sylvan, marvelous, marvelous singing, and beautiful piano playing by David Breitman. Those are really very special songs. I've never heard them
Oh,
before.
they're so amazing. That late, pure thing that Fauré kept moving towards, you know. It was funny, during his life he would kind of peek at that, do some pieces like that, and then go back to the very lush thing, and then finally by the end, I think by the 90s or the 100, what you call it?
Decade.
No,
Of opus numbers.
Opus numbers, thank you. Things just seem to get pure and pure, and never an extra anything from him.
I think singers know Fauré better than I do. Coming from the instrumentalists, we know certain of the pieces, and the songs that I've heard are gorgeous. I don't know them. I should really learn them. I'm seeing now.
Yeah, there's the great chamber music too.
Yeah, wonderful
Incredible
pieces.
quintettes, piano quintettes.
2 quartets and quintet. And there's a certain amount of piano music too, which is not played that often. Most of it is early. In fact, we're going to be recording this music that we just performed here and La Bonne Chanson, and I will play 2 of the Fauré nocturnes on that recording.
Now, David, if I didn't know anything about you, I'd imagine that your field was French romantic music or French post-romantic impressionist music. In fact, you're teaching now at Oberlin, or have been, I think, for a while. You have a doctorate with a study with Malcolm Bilson in early performance practice.
Right, exactly. Well, it's funny. French is, well, I have worked for a long time at speaking French. I can do tolerably well. And
Haven't been born in Montreal.
having been born in Montreal, but in the English community where I went only to English schools and people spoke French all around me, and I felt mute, and really only in my 30s I decided this is ridiculous. My hometown, I should be able to speak to the people who live there. And when I've performed there, one of the things that I have, well, makes me very nervous, but I'm very proud of, is to actually be able to speak a little bit to the audience in French about the music. So French is another interest for me.
I think you got one of these know-it-all pianists there.
Oh,
Sanford.
absolutely. MIT.
Yeah. What did you study there?
Well, I ended up being as near as you can be to a music major. In fact, John Harbison, of whom we'll play one little piece, was one of my teachers. There was really the most important person for me there.
I suppose most people do know John Harbison. Tell us a little about this piece, though. I don't know. It's called The Flute of Interior Time.
The Flute of Interior Time is, well, there's a whole, William Parker, the great American baritone who died of AIDS just in this past year, April. When Will had been diagnosed for a long time and decided to do something proactive as opposed to anything else, and he took an anthology of poetry dealing with AIDS and its various associations, and sent this book to just about every great composer that he loved, and said, could you please write something? In order to create this thing called the AIDS Quilt Songbook, taken from the inspiration of the quilt itself. And what is so astonishing, David and I met Will a long time ago at the Kennedy Center competition in 1979. We were babies, and Will was kind of an elder brother, you know, and so then I got lucky, and I sang with Will a lot during the years. Luckily, in the Matthew Passion of Bach, you know, you need always 2 baritones, or often, and so Will and I sang a lot together, a lot. And Will, the whole spirit of this project, every single step of it was one of generosity and love, which emanated completely from Will. And so, for instance, the premiere, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to have them write songs for me, he said, no, I want 4 baritones. And baritones in general, we get along. We have Bill Sharp and Kurt. These people are all friends of mine, actually, you know, so we tend to hang out together. And Will has split up this whole songbook. There are songs by, my brain's out, Ned Rorem and Chris Blasio, which we'll get to later. Anyway, so John, though, what was amazing is that John sent the thing, and Will sent the invitation to John Harbison, who had been studying Kabir poems as translated by Robert Bly, and really helped the quilt by setting a song that was not necessarily site-specific, but just about questions of our existence and love. And that's why we just love this song, because John is a great composer. He's received Pulitzer Prize for The Flight into Egypt, which is a great oratorio from the Bible, and has written string quartets and much chamber music, 2 symphonies, I think, 2 or 3 symphonies, an opera.
Violin concerto for his wife, actually.
Violin concerto for Rosemary, exactly. So we find that within the context of the the whole quilt songbook, when we do this, it's a way of not so much stepping back as just breathing into a different viewpoint. I mean, so many of the songs are so beautifully set to the specific issues of healing, illness, sickness, death, dying, sorrow, which of course the whole epidemic brings up in all of us anyway. And then this song is something else, and John said it in a very sparse and spare style.
Let's get to it. Once again, Sanford Sylvan and David Breitman. This is music of John Harbison. The piece is called The Flute of Interior Time. That's really a marvelous song. I see what you mean. It makes a very great deal out of very little.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was Sanford Sylvan singing for us, music of John Harbison, a song called The Flute of Interior Time. David Breitman at the piano. You'd mentioned the quilt songbook, and we're going to move now to a composer who is prominent in that, Chris de Blasio. Are these songs actually part of the quilt?
The last song, Walt Whitman, in 1989, is a song that was written for the quilt. Oh no, excuse me, he wrote it as part of this cycle and will incorporate it into the quilt. And it's become, you'll hear why when we do it, I mean, the music is so beautiful. It's become one of the most popular songs.
Tell us about Chris de Blasio.
Well, he just died. He's a wonderful composer who's written a lot of vocal music, a lot of choral music, and I'm sorry, I'm speechless. What to say, Perry Brass is a poet friend of Chris's who's very well known in the gay community, and this cycle is so amazing for many musical reasons, but also I think the most amazing thing for myself is that there's a moment in this song that when we were first rehearsing it, I looked up and I thought, now I've never sung a song about that specific an image in my life. Because as a gay person, you know, we sing songs and we are acting this and that, and there's the woman and this. And in this song, there's an amazing, it's the second song in the cycle. It's called Train Station, and it's a man who is saying goodbye to his lover. And he's just lover's getting on the train, but he wants to kiss him.
Yeah.
And he can't.
No, I've read the poetry of this, and then finally at the end chases after him.
Yeah, it grabs the train, and it's so affirming. So the whole thing is so affirming of just bravery and strength. And he says he kissed his small lips hungrily with everyone behind me like glass. You know, that great thing when you do something kind of out of time and everything else stops. So the poems are wonderful and speak very much to me, and the music is so beautiful. Chris has written a bunch of other cycles, one called In Endless Ascent to Poems of Elizabeth Bishop, which David and I are going to do at some point. And we lost him too soon.
We have his music.
Yeah, we do, and we're lucky for that.
There's a song cycle of a young composer called Chris de Blasio. The cycle is called All the Way Through Evening. Sanford Sylvan and David Breitman.
Witness sometimes the way the evening dies, the glow charred black to ruddy dust, pushing against the drag of sleep, all the way to morning. I try to keep its lowering darkness somewhere just above the head. Still comes the slack of things without dreams and thoughts dead and inspired night, falling deeper without drowning, nor lifted by hope, nor all delicious pictures of the world entombed in light. But through the tarnish of fatigue slips something familiar dream, cutting the dark waters with his silver oars. Here, just a half-breath long, warmth before the cold. One last ray comes before the disappearance of light. I wanted to kiss your wrist that night. I said goodbye to you in public. I was afraid you'd be upset and wrench your hand away, or perhaps be embarrassed by my feelings rushing past those walls of decorum that define what we can do. And so held back until the end, not to see you again for months, or who knows, turned away, I ran before the crowd detached, when the cars began to move, and losing nothing worse than losing you, I kissed your small lips hungrily, with everyone behind me like glass, until the noise resumed. And I dashed the exit gate and watched a train push out, and stood gripping the gatepost, jerking like a heat storm. Forever the beautiful men ride into the night. Some are primitive and beat the saddest songs of one or two gaunt and shifting notes, while others throw shadows traced with purple and leave word for one another in the mouths of seashells. Now come the winds up above the Orient, and the setting sun dissolves like crimson cliffs from poppies in the surf. Still a certain pinkness spreads up above the troubles of our age. There the clouds are meeting Walt Whitman has come down today to the hospital room. He rocks back and forth in the crisis. He says it's good we haven't lost our closeness, and cries as each one is taken. He has written many lines about these years, the disfigurement of young men and the wars of hard tongues and closed minds. The body in pain will bear such nobility, but words have the edge of poison when spoken bitterly. Now he takes a dying man in his arms and tells him how deeply flows the river that takes the old man and his friends this evening. It is the river of dusk and lamentation. Float, says, dear river, I will carry this young man to your bank. I'll put him myself on one of your strong flat boats, and we'll sail together all the way through evening, all the way through evening, all the way through
Oh, those are remarkable songs. This is the music of Chris de Blasio, All the Way Through Evening. Sung for us by Sanford Sylvan. David Breitman was the pianist. They're almost too close. It's quite remarkable the way, I hope you folks could get that text. I mean, Sanford sings it so clearly that you can get every word. Walt Whitman comes down like a guardian angel on that last one. He's come down from the hospitals of the Civil War.
Right.
And he's come down to our own.
It's so interesting. I mean, he spent so much time as a nurse. And that's the basis for the Wound Dresser text, the John Adams piece.
Right.
And it's so wonderful to take that Perry Brass did, and then turn it, this way. And there are so many people who are doing this work, who are just, being Whitmans. The time calls for it, and people are really responding in wonderful ways.
Yeah.
So the other thing about the cycle that I forgot to talk about before was that the third song about Paul Jacobs, I know that for just about every classical musician, that was the first name. That was like the first. I remember it was like a steel knife. I opened the Times like everybody else, and it was just this horrible, dull sound. I think we all just realized this is it. Here we go.
Paul Jacobs, of course, was the pianist of the New York Philharmonic for many years. He died early 1983.
Yeah.
A number of people have memorialized him. He's in John Corigliano's First Symphony, which, there's actually a tune there that's for Paul. And Elliott Carter, of course, wrote the Night Fantasies not very long before Paul died.
Yeah.
Which he shared with some other pianists, Ursula Oppens and Charles Rosen. I love this line of poetry. Paul Jacobs is playing Busoni on the radio. Where that poem.
Actually, there's a good story.
I guess the listeners don't know that of the songs in this cycle, they each have a title, and this one is called An Elegy to Paul Jacobs. And when we were learning this piece, I thought, oh, I better go listen to that Paul Jacobs Busoni record, because surely there's a musical quotation in here. And I realized that we got to the performance and the composer was there, and I didn't know. And I thought, he would say, or I'd want to say how ingeniously he used the quotation. And I met him afterwards, and we had this really lovely conversation in which one of the things that we discussed is he's never heard the recording of Paul Jacobs playing Busoni, neither on the radio nor any other way, and so there's no direct allusion.
I wondered, as I was looking through, I had the same instinct. I thought, what, can this be that or Dr.
It just
Faustus?
evokes that kind of world,
Yeah. We have time for... One of the great things which music can do by way of healing is transport us. If we're going to go back to the music with which we began, Brahms' folk songs, let us take us back to the mid-19th century, and in a way, way before that, these are all archetypal. Sing us some more Brahms. What do you want to sing for us?
We're going to do one of the most famous ones, Da unten im Tale, which is a wonderful, beautiful song. It's funny, I always think of this character as being a woman, another kind of smart woman, and saying, it didn't work out. And that makes me sad, but better luck next time, And then the last song is a great song. This guy singing about his girlfriend, and she's just, everything about her is the best. And he has to say la, 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 la a million times, because she's so great.
Sanford Sylvan and David Breitman. Two more Brahms folk songs.
Mein Mädel hat einen Rosenmund, und wer ihn küsst, der wird gesund. O du schwarzbraunes Mägdelein, du lalalala, du lässt mir keine Ruhe. Die Wangen sind wie Morgenröt, wie sie steht überm Winterschnee. O du schwarzbraunes Mägdelein, du lalalala, du lässt mir keine Ruhe. Deine Augen sind wie die Nacht, so schwarz, denn nur zwei Sternlein funkeln drin. O du schwarzbraunes Mägdelein, du lalalala, du lässt mir keine Ruhe.
That's wonderful. Two of Brahms' settings of folk song, German folk song, sung for us by Sanford Sylvan, our baritone this morning, and David Breitman at the piano once again. Good, we needed that.
Yes.
There's a wonderful thing about a song recital. It can have a shape and an architecture. It can be different, of course, from one to the next.
Absolutely.
And the program that you've built for us today had the most wonderful shape because it sort of started in a relatively lighthearted way with a Maid of the Mill.
Sure.
And then you've taken us through some pretty deep valleys.
We're so lucky about music being able to offer us so much in so many ways.
Yeah. The great thing, I think, again and again, I find as we grow older, it just refreshes, restores, sort of validates us as human beings.
It also says the things we can't say. I think that's, for me, personally, somehow the biggest gift.
Yeah. Well, this was a wonderful program. Schubert and Brahms, then Ravel and Fauré, John Harbison, Chris de Blasio, and now once again Brahms at the end. How very nice to make your acquaintance finally. I've heard you sing, I've been in the audience and applauded you from a distance. It's wonderful to actually have you here in the room and hear you sing up close.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful experience for us.
Really terrific to have us here. Thank you.
You must come again.
We'd like to.
Yeah. If this is the sort of program, I'm sure that the next time you come, it'll be something completely different and,
Right.
and no less fascinating.
Winterreise.
You're on. Well, thanks, my friends. Has been a wonderful morning with Sanford Sylvan and David Breitman. Hope you've found that, I know you have, found that as stimulating and moving, and also as touching in a kind of humorous way from time to time. To wonderful music making makes us realize the art of this song is never more vital than it is just right this moment. If there's anyone else you'd like to hear on this show, I mean, it happens that Sanford Sylvan's been a favorite of mine from some years. You can always write to us at St. Paul Sunday Morning, care of Minnesota Public Radio, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55101. I promise we'll read them. That's all for this week. This is Bill McGlaughlin wishing you a wonderful week and inviting you to return next week. We'll be back here with St. Paul Sunday Morning.